So maybe one of the biggest questions here is, are we being delusional by thinking that somehow this election is going to get overturned or these results are going to be found out to not be valid? Are we being delulu to think that or to hope for that? Hi, my name is Angie and I'm an astrologer, and this is my post-election update video. A couple weeks before the election, I put out some information on some social media platforms where I talked about the conjunction of Saturn and the North Node in Pisces, and how the last time this happened was in 1877 during the most contested election of our United States history. And I had wondered if we would see something similar happening with this particular election. Prior to the election, and even right after, the video I put on TikTok and what I put on Instagram didn't get a lot of traction, didn't get a lot of attention. And then a few weeks later, all of a sudden, people started seeing the video, and a lot of people have been asking, so what do you think is going to happen now? How is this going to apply? What happened in 1877? How could we see that playing out here? What's going on with Trump's chart? Is he going to be the one in office come, January of next year? First, I want to go over some transit stuff between now and really until the spring to give us an idea of what we're looking at collectively. So we've got this Mercury retrograde starting on November 25th, tomorrow, as of me filming this. And this is going to go through December 15th, which is during the process of the election results being verified, which is interesting because Mercury is a planet of gathering information. And when Mercury is retrograde, in general, the thought process is we don't have all the information yet. And this is not the first election that we've had the influence of Mercury retrograde and even Mars retrograde, which I'll be talking about here in a minute. But the timing of this is what makes this kind of unique. When Mercury stations retrograde on November 25th, it's going to station retrograde in a square to Neptune. Could we be a little too hopeful, delusional even, until these results are verified and we get the, that hard answer of yes, he is going to be inaugurated. Yes, this is actually going to happen. And then getting hit with depression, disappointment afterwards, all those Neptunian things. So we've got this Mercury retrograde during this verifying of the election results, right? And then we're going to have piggybacking that a Mars retrograde that's going to start December 6th and go through basically the end of February. When Mars is retrograde, we could all be at risk of feeling very frustrated and like there's not a whole lot we can do about something, that we can't assert ourselves or we can't defend ourselves. And there can be this kind of pressure cooker of frustration and anger. When Mars is retrograde in Leo, which is where it will start, there can be this sense of pride and not wanting to show weakness that can be part of this whole building frustration thing. And then in the beginning of next year, Mars is going to retrograde back into Cancer, which is the sign of roots and where we come from. And this can include your ethnicity and your race. So with Mars retrograding here, we could see issues popping up related to race, ethnicity, prejudice, that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, we've got that Saturn North Node conjunction, but this isn't happening until February through like April. And this is where my human brain and my astrologer brain kind of divert off into two different lands, because my human brain says that doesn't mean that we're going to see a repeat of the election of 1877. But my human brain says February through April is after the inauguration. So this can't be showing the actual election results being overturned. That's what my human brain says. But then my astrologer brain goes back to astrology is recognizing patterns and the same types of events that happen in correlation with certain astrological events. So to get a better idea of what might be going on here, I decided to look a little bit more in depth at what Trump has going on between now and next spring. And truth be told, he has a lot of very supportive aspects. He's got Jupiter in his 10th house of career, giving lots of extra help in that department. Also getting a Jupiter trine, again, very supportive, things kind of going your way. But when I start peeling back the layers of the timeline between now and in particular next March and April, things look like they could take a turn. So starting with the Mercury retrograde that I talked about in the beginning, Mercury will actually station on his south node and in a conjunction to his moon. When Mercury has a retrograde cycle that kind of DJ scratches back and forth over our south node, it often represents a time where we're really busy, but we're busy helping other people and we're not really busy doing stuff that's really benefiting us. It just feels like we're exerting a lot of mental energy to do things for other people. That Mercury is going to station in a square to Neptune. Like I said, there's could be this kind of confusion or a delusion as far as the information that we're seeing. We could be wanting to believe what we want to believe, and this could be true for Trump as well. When Mars goes retrograde, this is the beginning of some of the potential crunchiness I'm looking at for him. When Mars stations retrograde on December 6th, it's going to be within just a few degrees of Trump's natal Pluto placement, and Mars happens to rule both his fourth and ninth houses. Fourth house has to do with what's going on at home, domestic stuff, and the ninth house has to do with the courts. And when Mars goes retrograde, for all of us, the houses that are ruled by Mars are the houses that could see a little bit of a hit, or see some pullback with the energy there, that we need to reassess or redo something. So to me, this looks like right around Mars is stationing, Trump is either going to be behind the scenes really getting very fired up and wound up, maybe kind of upset, kind of blowing a gasket about something, which is interesting because that is going to coincide with that Mercury retrograde and when these results are getting verified. So is there something coming out that's making him mad, but he feels like he can't like really show just how mad he is? And then as we get towards the beginning of the year, and especially the first few months of the year, Saturn really starts to play a big role in what Trump's got going on as far as transits. Transit Saturn will start bending or squaring the nodes of the moon in Donald Trump's chart. This is important because this generally shows hitting some kind of resistance with what you're trying to do, going up against somebody, some kind of authority figure, or reaching a lot of points of no, you can't do that right now. At the same time, Saturn will also be squaring his natal Sun and Uranus conjunction. That is very interesting because that looks like Trump, who is someone who definitely doesn't like to be told what to do, definitely doesn't like to not have total power and control in a situation, likes to be able to pop off and be this kind of unpredictable figure. With Saturn squaring his Sun and Uranus, this shows something coming in squeezing, like restricting his ability to be able to be crazy and do these unpredictable things. It almost looks like Trump is some kind of puppet and he's stuck between like a rock and a hard place, and he has to, it looks like he might feel like he has to play ball, like somebody owns him. Now, at the same time, that's all happening. Transit Jupiter is also going to be, conjunct his north node, his Sun, Uranus. So on the surface, and what we see, because this is in the 10th house, right? From what we see, he's going to be all smiles and like everything's great. But when Saturn starts to square both his Sun and his moon, his health is likely going to take some kind of hit there as well, especially with the age he's at. Where things look to be potentially particularly crunchy for Trump is mid-March through mid-April. That month, maybe even a little bit beforehand, looks like we could see something pretty significant going on with him. Saturn is going to enter his 8th house on March 18th. This is super important. Saturn will also enter JD Vance's 8th house right around the same time. Saturn brings this restrictive, squeezing energy, and the 8th house is the house of power and control. And when Saturn enters the 8th house, we have to learn some very difficult lessons in trying to exert our own power and control. And even more interestingly is transit Pluto will be starting to make an opposition, albeit a wide one, but still making an opposition to Trump's natal Pluto, which also will bring up issues of manipulation, power, control. There could be a whole reap what you've sown kind of thing. I think there's a lot of people out there who feel like Trump has been able to get away with a lot in life. Could this be a time we see him having to reap what he has sown? I hope so. My human brain questions if that will happen, but my astrologer brain says it's definitely possible. So Saturn's going to enter his 8th house on March 18th, and this is 4 days after a full moon Virgo eclipse. That's going to be happening right on Trump's second house cusp, something big coming to a head or a culmination point when it comes to his assets and his priorities and his stuff. and his earned income. And then on March 29th, so just 11 days after Saturn enters Trump's eighth house, which is also shared resources, right? Then we're going to have this new moon eclipse in Aries, which will be landing in Trump's eighth house of debt, of shared resources, of power, of control. And this is also going to be when Venus will be retrograde in March. And what's interesting about this is the last time Venus was retrograde, see, Venus rules Trump's midheaven, right? Because midheaven is in Taurus and that's ruled by Venus. So when Venus goes retrograde, that can be kind of a tricky time for him and his reputation. And the last time Venus went retrograde, like within a week of Venus going retrograde, that's when special counsel Jack Smith filed the indictment against him. And here's what's crazy about this. The last time Saturn transited Trump's eighth house was between 1996 and 1998. And 1996 was when he was supposed to have assaulted E. Jean Carroll. And 1997 is when him and Marla Maples separated. After me babbling about all this stuff, what do I think is happening here? I don't have a lot of faith that the election results are going to get overturned before he's inaugurated. But I do think that very quickly into this presidency, something is going to shift and change. Whether this is, Vance trying to have Trump basically say, I forget the 26th Amendment. I know my husband told me about this, but some clause where the vice president can basically say, hey, the president isn't all there. Could this be Vance, doing this, trying to do this with Trump? Could be. Could there be another force, maybe someone from another country? Or could it be someone who's like a mega billionaire that he's buddies with that all of a sudden he feels like he's being controlled by, or he has to, do what this person or what these people want him to do? With Saturn in his eighth house and squaring the moon, the sun, all that, I'm very confident that Trump is going to run into some serious snags come this spring when it comes to trying to exert his power and trying to run things the way that he thinks he's going to. And one other thing I kind of wanted to leave in here with all of this stuff is I live in Colorado, and Governor Polis is one of the governors in the United States that's been very vocal lately about basically saying he's not going to just bow down to whatever the Trump administration says they're going to do. There's certain things that he will not allow to happen in the state of Colorado. And that got me thinking, I wonder what Governor Polis's chart would look like with Trump's chart. And lo and behold, we don't have a birth time for Governor Polis, but we do know that he's a Taurus sun right at that 24-degree mark, which also happens to be Trump's midheaven. When someone's sun lands right on your midheaven, they can either completely elevate you and be a champion for your cause, or they could be the very thing that kind of says, hey, check this guy out. He's not doing things right. Now, do I hope we find out that he cheated and the election results, somehow get overturned? I hope that happens, but that's not what happened in 1877. The results weren't overturned in favor of the person who actually won. So I just don't. I wish I had better news, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think he is going to be inaugurated, but I think very quickly after he's inaugurated, things are going to take a turn. The thing that gives me hope is knowing that as a society, and especially the United States as a nation, we are facing a lot of change that is necessary. And unfortunately, I think we have to be squeezed out of our comfort zone to such a degree that really forces us into fighter mode. That whatever's happening here over this next year or two might be the motivating thing that it takes for us to make some really necessary change in this country. So, what do you guys think? I know it's probably not what you wanted to hear, but I'm being realistic about what I'm looking at here. So, tell me what you think.